Can a Christian suffer well, even if no one, including movie critics, understand why? For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet. This is Breakpoint. A substantial part of Terrence Malick's latest movie, A Hidden Life, takes place in a German prison, where the film's protagonist, a real historical figure now considered a Catholic saint, Franz Jägerstätter, is being held in prison for refusing to swear a loyalty oath to Hitler. As he mills about the prison yard with his fellow inmates, two words loom large on the stone wall that fences them in. Sprechen Verboten, speaking prohibited. Dreher, senior editor at the American Conservative, has called A Hidden Life the best evocation of the gospel ever put to film. Now, that's a serious claim to make, and I might agree. Malick, a director known for transportive cinematography, takes viewers into the remote Austrian village of St. Radegund in the early 1940s. There, Franz, his wife Fani, and their three small daughters faithfully farm their land and faithfully attend the local Catholic Church. When Franz hears about Hitler's conquest, he begins to worry. His worst fears are realized when he's called up for military service, but refuses to swear the required oath to the Führer. Ultimately, Franz Jägerstätter was imprisoned, tortured, and ultimately executed. Not only does the film powerfully portray the suffering Franz is forced to endure, but also how his decision to refuse the oath baffles nearly everyone around him. Apparently, it's a decision that still baffles people today, especially film critics. For example, in a review for Rolling Stone, Peter Travers faults Malick for giving audiences, quote, very little to help us understand the man behind the saint, and next to nothing about, quote, the thought process that helped Franz hold steadfast. Well, apparently for Travers, devout Christian faith is very little. In reality, of course, by portraying Franz's devout Christian faith so clearly, Malick has told audiences all they need to know. Before his imprisonment, Franz seeks counsel from his local priest and eventually his bishop. Both warn what his obstinance might bring to bear on his vulnerable family. Even so, Franz holds fast to his faith, and his wife holds fast to hers. Given the central role that faith plays in the film, one might expect it to be a bit more preachy. In fact, there's very little dialogue, preaching or otherwise, in the whole 3-hour film. While we hear the words of faith in Franz's letters to Fani and in Fani's prayers for Franz, it's almost as if the sign on the prison wall, speaking prohibited, is the film's central theme. Thus, in this film, the gospel's power and Franz's faith is mostly shown, not spoken. Perhaps that's why certain secular critics miss the obvious here. Franz doesn't give a theological lecture on the historicity of the resurrection or virtue signal via rousing testimony about his own moral courage. His is a quiet faithfulness, first shown by how he works his farm, trusting God for harvest, and eventually shown as he follows his conscience, which for some reason just won't allow him to say those words of that oath that's required. Franz faces every temptation to compromise. His neighbors and family even appeal to his own values in attempting to change his mind. Isn't he being prideful or judgmental by refusing to swear the oath? Doesn't he have a duty to his family? And of course, there's that temptation to be practical. What if, Franz's lawyer asks him, he could serve as a medic? What if he didn't have to carry arms? Would that solve the problem? Well, Franz's final answer is finally put into words in a powerful scene, where a Nazi officer, not unlike Pontius Pilate questioning Jesus, asks why he's doing this. Franz's answer? I don't know. I just know that something inside me tells me I can't swear that oath. That's the Christian life. Everyday faithfulness to whatever the Holy Spirit is asking of us. Now, will his defiance change the course of the war? Will it bring down Hitler? Probably not. Will it endanger him and his family? Definitely yes. But God doesn't call us to the results. Those are always and everywhere His. God calls us to obedience, even if it's hidden. I cannot say that Franz's decision is prescriptive for everyone else. The key is that Franz must follow God's call on his own life. In an early scene, Franz tells a frightened fellow inmate to, quote, trust what you knew in better times. If we, like Franz, would build a solid foundation for faith in better times, we would have better ears to hear what God would have us do in the midst of our trials. This film will give you lots to think about and lots to talk about. Please know that it contains some violence and the subject matter is obviously intense. But even so, I recommend A Hidden Life heartily. For Breakpoint, I'm John Stonestreet.